It's time for Windows Weekly, and I'm so excited. The bits have shipped. Paul Thurrott looks at the release version of Windows 8. Our first look coming up next on Windows Weekly.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
Bandwidth for Windows Weekly is provided by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com. It's time for Windows Weekly with Paul Thurrott, episode 274, recorded August 16th, 2012. Hadoop-a-polooza. Windows Weekly is brought to you by the new Squarespace. Squarespace introduces a new content management system to go with their great hosting, making it faster and easier to create a high-quality website or blog. Plus, more than 50 new features, including mobile responsive designs with automatic device scaling. For a free trial and 10% off your first purchase, go to squarespace.com and use the offer code Windows8. And by Audible.com. To download the free audiobook of your choice, go to audible.com/Windows. It's time for Windows Weekly, the show where we cover some very exciting the new Windows is here. The new Windows is here. So excited. Paul Thurrott is here also. He's in France. But that doesn't matter. He's willing to be here, and I admire that. Thank you for being here, Paul.
No problemo, as we say here in France.
When do you come? No problemo. That's French, isn't it?
You speak very good French.
No problemo.
Gracias.
Mary Jo, what's her name's not here. We can't remember her last name or where she went. But
that's awful, isn't it? I can't
terrible.
Think where she went. I know.
Chat room. Do you know where Mary Jo Foley went? Do you have any idea? What time is it in France? They want to know.
It's almost 8:30.
Vegas? Vegas? No, she went to Vegas?
No,
she passed out? We ate her, they said. She's doing a show on 5x5.
By the way, the hum that people are hearing is it's got to be this USB thing I'm using. Yeah. And
it's not
I think
bad.
when I get home, I'm going to have a ritualistic killing of it. So
it's not
this
bad.
will be the last
it's okay. Show. It's fine. It's not bad. It's not bad. She went to The Verge.
Yeah.
She's at beer school. Anyway, we have some theories, but nobody has any real knowledge. We'll find out next week. She will be back, of course. But, this is how it used to be. Just two guys sitting around talking about Windows.
Talking about Vista.
The good old days.
Let's talk about Vista, shall we?
Was it Vista when we started this show? Must be. We've done 274 weekly episodes. That's more than 5 years.
Exact, so that would have been, 2005 or 6?
Jeez Louise.
6?
2007. Right?
7.
Yeah.
Really? No, it had been 6 because it was before Vista, right before Vista came out.
Unbelievable, Paul.
Yeah.
We started this show when Windows 95 was still the dominant operating system.
I miss it so much. Dial-up networking.
So we've been together, you and I, for the announcement of Windows Vista, for the announcement of Windows 7. And today, ladies and gentlemen, we have the bits. Windows 8 RTM. I presume you've installed it on all your machines.
Actually, oddly enough, I have not. I have weird various builds on all of my machines. The machine I'm using here for this actually is the RTM version. But I'm in kind of a weird state of flux. But of course, working on the book and everything, I had different versions, and
that's got to be confusing. Actually,
yeah, it's weird. And I have to say, and I have a little bit later on about how I feel about Windows 8 and everything. But one of the things I do like about the final version is the way that apps look on the desktop. I like the new.
It's making me crazy. I have it on this USB key, and I can't install it. I want to see it.
It's so far. It's nice. I like it.
So you said what looks different?
Well, the Explorer does.
We'll get to all of this. Actually, we'll get to all this. Let's first say that who did get the bits, because I don't want people to think you could go into the store now and buy a box set.
I know. In the good old days, that's what it was, right? You would announce something, you would set a date, and then that date would come and people would go buy it. Yeah. And that's how these things worked. And now it's kind of a weird, slow rollout. So they announced RTM back on the 1st, a little over 2 weeks ago. Yesterday, TechNet and MSDN subscribers got access to the RTM versions of the various versions of Windows 8. There's Windows 8 Core, Pro, and Enterprise. Depending on your subscription level and which one you have, you gain access to different versions of it. And then they also released a 90-day evaluation version of Windows 8 Enterprise Edition that will get you through the actual launch of the product at the end of October, but you can't upgrade it to the final version because that's really the one that they aim at their volume license customers, the big businesses. And then today, their software assurance volume licensing customers got it. And off the top of my head, I don't recall exactly how this goes, but basically there are a couple more drops of this thing, and then we have about a month off, and then they ship the retail version, and you can buy the computers in stores at the end of October.
So the people who have it right now are basically developers and businesses or IT guys who have to test it for business. Software assurance customers, that's all business, right?
Right.
So,
yeah, I mean, anyone who has TechNet or MSDM subscription has probably, was probably sitting up their finger on the download button, waiting for this thing here, and then you get X number of product keys depending on which kind of subscription you have and which service you're on and all that. So,
of course, hardcore enthusiasts are often TechNet. TechNet's not very expensive. MSDN's pretty expensive, but that's you get a lot with that. But TechNet's not hugely expensive. It's a few $100 a year, right?
Yeah, so the cheapest version of MSDN, I want to say, is $699. It's the operating system's version, so it's one of the ones you would get Windows 8 with, but obviously that's pretty expensive. And I want to be clear about this because this has been misconstrued in the past. I mean, both TechNet and MSDN are aimed at specific audiences, and the software that they provide to these people is not aimed for you to distribute to everyone in your family and everyone in your blog. And it's not, people sort of misunderstand it and misuse it in that way. And unfortunately, in the case of TechNet, because they do have a very low-end version of the subscription, TechNet Standard, which I think is $200 a year and then $149 a year to
so that's low enough that a serious enthusiast probably would buy it.
Yeah, right. Well, but the problem is people have been abusing it. So, and I don't mean to take complete credit for this, but I, among other people, were talking about this subscription last year in particular. And since that time, they've been cutting back on the number of keys you get and all that kind of stuff. And I think people were really just abusing it. And so I looked at I have a TechNet Standard subscription myself, and I got 2 product keys for it's Windows 8 Pro only. If I had the next TechNet subscription up, which is significantly more expensive, I would also get the Enterprise Edition or whatever. But I want to say last year, I think it was 5, I think you got, and there were 10 activations on each one of them. And I don't know if the activation count has gone down. That's one of those things I need to research. But they've been significantly cutting back on how many keys they're giving out because, again, I think people are just, here's one for my daughter, here's one for my friend. Oh, you need a copy, here's a copy for you. I mean, I think people are just giving them out.
So what do you, essentially now what you get is one license, or what do you get?
I'm not sure what you get through TechNet, but I think the point with Windows 8 is that we can sort of be upset with Microsoft for doing this, but on the other hand, they're making it inexpensive enough with this version that for people to use it legitimately is not going to be expensive. And so you can actually go to MicrosoftStore.com or whatever and buy Windows 8 yet. You have to wait till the end of October for that.
Right.
But when that happens, you'll be able to do that for $40. And I think at that point it becomes kind of a no-brainer. So,
right.
If you even 5 computers, you could say $200.
It's well worth it.
That's less than the cost of one Windows license.
Right.
So I think they've just made it so that you really have to be going out of your way to pirate something at this point to not just pay for this thing.
All right, let's talk. What do you think? First of all, is it much different from what we've seen so far?
No. So, as we move from the release preview to the final version, really not major changes. I mean, and I have actually a hard time keeping up with this stuff because, again, I kind of moved along a little more quickly than everyone else because of the book, and I actually have a hard time. The laptop I've been using on this trip, for whatever reason, actually still has the release preview version of Windows on it. It's on a dual boot, and I don't even remember how this happened, but for whatever reason, that's what I've been sitting writing in all day, every day. And it is weird because the Explorer bits are very different, and they've really made them more opaque in this version and flat, and there's no transparency. And I like that look. I mean, I as someone who sits in the desktop all day, I like it. I like that kind of flat matte look. It's just got kind of a nice contrasty thing going on. It's nice. They've added a bunch of wallpapers, of course, and all that, that kind of stuff. On the start screen, they have new themes, as I call them themes. Themes is not a word that Microsoft uses, but basically a combination of foreground and background colors for all of the Metro experiences, as well as what apparently Microsoft calls tattoos, which are these background patterns that you see on the start screen. And depending on the combinations you use, they can be very, very colorful. In fact, they could be like bedazzled almost. They're like pinning rhinestones to everything or something. It's a very strange look, but you can customize that stuff, to your liking and so forth. So I would say that's probably, it really kind of frou-frou stuff, what I just described there. It's just mostly fit and finish type stuff, but really not a huge difference. Obviously the store is opened up. We can pay for apps now. There's a couple of paid apps in there. Games are available. There's some Windows games for Xbox Live. A couple of paid apps? Yeah, most of the apps. I wanted to do a little screenshot gallery of what it was like to buy an app, and so I started navigating through the store. There are hundreds of apps. What you're saying is they're mostly free. Yeah, but they're almost all free. So I went into games. I think surely there will be a paid game in here, and there isn't, or there wasn't when I did it. And I thought, well, that's odd. Well, I'll go productivity. There's got to be something in here, productivity. Nope. And you really have to look. Actually, I think there was one game. It might have been an educational title, which I didn't feel like buying. But you really have to kind of look to find a paid app at this point. I think obviously that's going to change over time, but that stuff's all live, and that's very interesting. The Xbox Live stuff is semi-live in the sense that there are a handful of games for Windows 8. They're Xbox Live games. You can actually get achievements in them. You can play the games now and get achievements and all that stuff. That all works. That's kind of interesting. The interaction between Xbox Live, the games app, and the Windows Store is all in there, and that was something that we had to kind of guess at how that was going to work before. There's a new, I guess, I don't know if it's a beta version or at least an initial version of the Xbox Smart Glass app, which is that app that's going to replace Xbox Companion that will allow you to control your Xbox and then interact with these new games that are going to work in very different ways than they do today, meaning that you can, play a game of, say, I don't know, like Solitaire or Minesweeper or something like that, and then you could actually push it up onto the Xbox and continue playing the game on the console. That kind of thing. So there's a lot of little bits and pieces in there that just weren't available as recently as even a week ago. So stuff is kind of starting to light up. It's interesting to watch. And I think with Windows 8, because it's such a big change, compared to Windows 7, it's even more dramatic because the stuff that's lighting up is like stuff that, we've just never seen before. It's not like a new version of something we had before. It's like something completely different. And that's all very interesting to me anyway. I living in Windows 8 for a long time, it's cool that there's still new stuff to see.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
It's been interesting.
Any surprises?
No, although I wonder because in the same vein, just to look at a very small part of Windows 8, with those games, you can go into a game, a very simple game like Mahjong or Minesweeper or whatever, and the games are only kind of partially there. There's more stuff coming, and they're going to light that stuff up literally at general availability at the end of October. So there are going to be additional game types and maps and themes and all this kind of stuff that are going to come out when the OS actually hits the public. And so I think there's going to be, so far I think the stuff I've seen, I wouldn't call any of it surprising. But I think there are going to be some surprises coming down the road. And I think that's kind of a neat thing. Part of Microsoft's we're going to be quiet about everything, I think, is trying to hide some of the stuff that's coming. And I think there are going to be nice little bits and pieces in there. Not anything dramatic like, oh, by the way, we just shipped Windows 8.5 or something. I don't mean like that. But I think, we sort of understand there's like an Xbox Live Games app in there, an Xbox Games app, rather. We understand there are going to be Xbox games for Windows. We get that. But some of the capabilities and stuff, I think weren't really well understood and aren't in there right now, but are going to be soon. And so, that ability to, play a game, pause it, open up your tablet, continue the same exact game, using the same app on a different machine, that kind of stuff. I think that's along the vein of the types of things that are going to change, and I think those will be surprising to people certainly, and were surprising to me as I realized they were coming. So that's cool.
Yeah, it's important to realize that this isn't the general ship date. This is just the geek take a look date, and so they still have a month or two to prepare the store and add stuff. And
and that's what's weird about it. So if they had, think about it. If they'd shipped Windows 8 to developers and IT pros, and you went to the Windows Store and it just didn't work, that'd be reasonable, right? Because Windows 8 isn't really shipping until the end of October, and I don't think anyone would have questioned that. And the fact that it's open, you can actually buy apps, you can trial full apps if you wanted to. You can get some of these games to see what they're going to be like and actually play them now. That's nice. They didn't have to do that, and I don't think anyone really would have complained legitimately if they hadn't done it. But I think by doing that, it's kind of a neat thing. And so if you are part of a paying subscription or want to try the trial version, or you're just a technology enthusiast, whatever it is, I mean, it's neat that you can get in and not just run the OS, but have all that other stuff happening too.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, it's good.
What else? What other incredible observations have you made?
Well, I mean, so the way I look at this now is, so Windows 8 is sort of available, right? And it will become really available within about 2 months. And so this 2-month kind of period sitting here. And so I've got all this stuff that I need to write about Windows 8 and communicate about Windows 8. And of course, the book has got to come out and all that kind of stuff. And at some point, I have to write a review, and I think people. Some people, I think, expected me to publish something this week review-wise, and so I did put up sort of a short editorial. But my feelings about Windows 8 are really complex. I mean, it's I described it as sort of a mess, but I mean that in a semi-positive way. It's like a mess in a way that is kind of wonderful.
The best kind of mess.
That's like a childlike mess. Like when you're covered in chocolate ice cream or something. Like it's so bizarre and so contrary to anything I could have imagined. If I was ever involved in any kind of product planning for like the next version of Windows, nothing like this would have come out of my head. I mean, it's hard for me to even wrap my mind around it. It's so weird, And I know that for a lot of people who are suddenly what I would think of as like PC traditionalists, Windows 8 is this kind of affront, that I think people understand Microsoft needed to create something like this. They don't understand why they needed to bolt it right onto Windows. And I think the fundamental thing that people need to kind of wrap their minds around, and that I'm still wrestling with myself, really, is that Windows 8 is not Windows 7 plus this other stuff. Windows 8 is this completely new thing. It's really a mobile platform that sort of looks a little bit like Windows Phone and has maybe similar APIs for developers and a similar app model and all that kind of stuff, and is obviously heavily influenced on this mobile device world of iPads and Android tablets and all that kind of stuff. And it runs Windows. It's like it's the other way around. It's very similar, actually, to if you think about Mac OS 10. I don't mean technically, but conceptually, where they created this completely new system. In that case, it was based on Unix. It sort of looked like the Mac a little bit, but had all these new, hardware accelerated graphics and all this stuff. And it ran the old stuff too. In Apple's case, they used sort of a compatibility, almost a virtualization environment, right? Remember the classic environment they had, and it was a way for people to move forward to this new thing where they could bring forward their apps. I remember on the Mac, one of the big issues was they didn't have Adobe Photoshop on OS 10 for many years, and so that was an app they would run in Classic. And so now in Metro, as I'm still going to call it, we don't have Adobe Photoshop, and so we're going to run that on the desktop for a few years, and then eventually we're going to have Adobe Photoshop, and we're not going to need the desktop anymore. And as soon as you start talking like that, I think people freak out, and I do too, to be honest, because I am a desktop user. And I see myself being one for years down the road because of the types of things that I do, and I know that those apps are missing on the Metro side. But I also sort of recognize that this is the way the world is going, and that if Microsoft is not successful making this transition, my future as a writer may not be on Windows. I mean that
you got a little skin in this game, yeah.
Yeah, it's a little profound, So it's.
But that's not possible, is it?
Yeah, but I think things can fall apart more quickly than people maybe understand. That Microsoft will always control the kind of traditional PC market software-wise, which is great, except that the traditional PC market for software may eventually amount to nothing, and so owning that will mean nothing. The number of devices that are sold that are not what we think of as PCs today are getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And Microsoft needs to be part of that. And that's what this is about. And transitions like this are hard for many, many reasons. I've used examples like Microsoft examples because people maybe listening to this will understand them. Like when you move to something like the Zune from Windows Media Player, you get this really nice benefit from starting over from scratch. All of the kind of deadwood that was in Media Player when they went to Zune 2 anyway, goes away, and that's neat. But you lose functionality that many people rely on. In the case of Zoom, we lost the ability to do things like watch DVD movies, for example, or watch plays for sure videos or whatever. That's what happens. And so over time, you either add some of that stuff back, to make that platform more complete, or maybe you just fail. I mean, there's a kind of line you have to walk where you have to add enough of it back so that people move along. You can't add it all back because then you just you'd end up where you were in the past. And so I think with Windows 8, this is their chance to do this thing, where it's weird. You have to really kind of wrap your head around this stuff that we keep calling it Windows 8. I really feel like the real product here is Windows RT.
Yeah.
It's Windows RT. It's Windows RT. Windows RT is it. In other words, if you RT is the new NT, right? So the difference is they made this version that runs on the PCs we already have. And it runs all the desk software we already have. And it's going to help us move along. But I honestly feel like, even if it's not actually RT that takes off, that by pushing RT and by pushing ARM, Microsoft will be pushing the industry, by which I mean Intel, which makes the platform on the PC side, and all the PC makers as well, and all the software makers, to embrace this new paradigm. That it's I sort of say RT and I say ARM, but what I really mean is, system on a chip from a hardware perspective, whether it's ARM or Intel or AMD eventually. And I mean Metro, whether it's on Intel or ARM, and that these things are the future, If Metro fails, this other stuff, it slowly or quickly is going to dwindle away. I just think that's the way it goes.
I'm kind of shocked to hear you say that. There's a business market, right? There's a desk. Is there not? Are you thinking the market for desktop computing is going to die?
Well, so no. Well, no, it's not the same thing. Like, in other words, Christmas isn't going to come and go, and desktop computers are gone. I don't mean it like that, but
they're dying.
There's a market. Right now that we're sort of flat with PC sales, right? PC sales kind of 350 million units a year, right? Which is a lot of units. But how many smartphones do these companies sell in a year? How many tablets will they be selling a year, 4, 5, 6, 7 years down the road? The combinations of these devices is going to far outweigh the PC market at some point. Owning the PC market 10 years from now may be completely meaningless. It may be a pointless thing to claim. That the real money, the real size, the real bulk of the market, the general purpose computing stuff is happening elsewhere. And so we're only at the tip of it. I mean, it's just the beginning, but it is the beginning. And Windows RT and Windows 8 is a very bold gesture on the part of Microsoft. It's not one that I completely agree with, but honestly, again, we all complain about this stuff. I do more than anybody, really. But for Microsoft, and maybe that's not even a fair way to put it, not for Microsoft, but just in general, they're actually moving very quickly to embrace this future. It's not something that's sneaking up on them and we're wondering why they don't see it. Remember when Windows Vista came out and Apple was sniping them and Apple was sniping them and Apple was sniping them, and why are they not responding? There are things you could do to respond to this. And they were so slow to kind of adapt to the way things were going. I have this kind of feeling with Windows 8, and not just Windows 8, but post-Windows 8, that they're really getting it, that this is important and that it needs to happen quickly. And it's not the way they've done things in the past. And, the business market, which has historically been a very large chunk of Microsoft's revenues, if they're successful, will not be the biggest chunk of their revenues in the future.
Wow.
We'll see how.
But where are they going to go?
That's revenue-wise?
No, business markets. Are they going to...
where are they going to go? No, they're not going to go anywhere. But there's no huge growth there. In other words,
I see.
The size of the business market is relatively flat.
They've got to upgrade eventually. They're going to get new computers. Aren't they going to be Windows machines?
Yeah, but that only happens every 3, 6, 9, 10 years now.
Is it true? Is it the case that in the past Microsoft? Doesn't the lion's share of Microsoft revenue come from business, or how important is that consumer market? Obviously, the consumer market's transforming. I would agree on that. But the business market's not.
I'm talking out of my butt here, but roughly speaking, off the top of my head.
A place we've been before, by the way. I just want to...
Yeah, so we're very familiar with it. Probably 75% of Microsoft's revenue.
So now this makes sense. Because I always assumed that 75% was business.
No, it is. That's what I'm saying. It is. Definitely.
But business isn't going to... What, are they going to go to Linux? What are they going to do?
No, but there's a weird dance that occurs between Microsoft and these business customers, where in order to first of all, you get think back to when NT was something that nobody wanted. It was too big and expensive and slow, and what was the deal there? The way that Microsoft got into the business market was to give these people a product that looked and worked just like Windows, GUI, not obscure command lines, and was really, really inexpensive. Today they're just kind of ensconced. So how do you get these guys to come along with you when you can get Linux for free, basically, or whatever? And the way you do it is to basically do everything they ask. And so what they've asked of Microsoft was, we don't want to replace versions of Windows every 3 years. We want this thing to last for, you can extend the product lifecycle. And they did.
That makes sense.
They extended it
Sure.
and again.
Sure.
Again. And so the trade-off there is you get some sort of a steady income from these companies because they're on a subscription program of some kind.
The software assurance
but you're
or whatever.
supporting these versions of Windows for like forever.
Right.
So XP's been around for 10 years. Windows 7 will be around for 10 years.
In a way, that's a testament to how well Microsoft has done, how well made PCs are, that they've become durable goods, that they're no longer something you upgrade every 3 years.
Yeah, right. Congratulations. So
well done. You just killed your income stream.
But that's the thing. But Microsoft also sees how Apple makes money with these big, event marketing and constant upgrades. I mean, Apple's biggest success, honestly, is essentially marketing because they've convinced people not just to upgrade every year, which is amazing, right? But to upgrade every year on multiple products and hardware products. There are people who buy new iPods every year, iPhones, iPads.
Yeah, but notice Apple's income by far comes from those disposable products and not from the Macintosh. Same thing is happening in Microsoft, and that's happening in Microsoft. It's happening in Apple. People are not buying new desktops.
Right. And so, that PC business, that business, if you will always be whatever size it is, and maybe plus or minus a few percentage points, but it's not where the growth is, And I think that Microsoft sees there's this bigger market and that, it's not going to be like the world of the PC market from the 1990s or the 2000s where Microsoft owned like 85, 90% of the market or whatever, and everything was great. Microsoft may only own 33% of this market, and they'll split with, Google and Apple maybe, whatever. But that market is so much bigger that they may ultimately still make more money doing that. And so this transition is huge. This is the beginning of that. This is if this doesn't work, this is that. We always talk about this in Microsoft. This is how they become the next IBM. I mean, this is the thing that IBM never even tried to do, which was to take these bold steps to reinvent itself for a new era of computing. Microsoft has done this in the past, and they're always kind of self-congratulatory about it. We made the transition to the internet. We made the transition here. We did this, and this is a far bigger thing. It's one thing to add a browser to a desktop operating system. This time they're almost, I don't mean to say sneakily. It's not that they're being sneaky about it, but there is something sneaky about it, right? I mean, Windows 8 is like it's not what they say it is, right? I mean, it's not the next version of Windows, not really. It's a new thing. It runs Windows, but it's a new thing.
I do not think that is what you think it means.
Yeah.
It's not.
Well, I mean, they call it Windows 8. So you're like, well, obviously
that's the confusion. You understand? They called it Windows.
They call it Windows. Yeah. Well, they have to call it Windows. If they called it Zune, no one would buy it. That's the thing. Okay. That's why it's Windows, right? I mean, they have to call it Windows. People used to make fun of Windows because we had to go to the start screen or the start button rather to shut down the computer. So we all joked about that. Now we joke that we run a program called Windows that doesn't have any windows. It's like full screen. There's always something like this. We get it, but it's funny as they drop the Windows and the Windows Live and all that kind of weird branding that they used to have on everything from everything else. This kind of core product that they have, this Windows thing. It bears no resemblance whatsoever. And they did, by the way, they did this before. Remember, NT was a completely different, built from ground up. Right. It was supposed to be the Unix killer. Had nothing to do with classic DOS and Windows at all. But we made this transition, and I look at.
That's a really good point. That's a very good point.
I should be better about calling this because really what we're talking about here is RT, and this is why I argued earlier that the Metro name should just be WinRT because that's really what's happening here. We're moving to this new thing, and Windows 8 is really just a transitionary product to get us to this next thing.
For those of you still using desktops,
you sad Luddites.
We shall provide you with a weak approximation of what we think you really want.
Right. Listen, you Sallow Hill people. We're doing something new.
Did you have an epiphany when you realized this, or is this? I mean, have you thought this all along, or did you just have an epiphany?
This has kind of come to me over time. It's hard for me because I the people who don't like what I'm saying are going to complain about it.
And they are legion, by the way.
Oh yeah, sure, of course.
Because nobody likes it when you say, "Look, everything you think is changing. Everything you use is different."
Sure. I'm the problem is I'm with these people. I type for a living. I have to use a computer. I'm very intrigued by things like the iPad. I've attached this thing to a dock from time to time, a keyboard docked, and typed on it. How will this work? This does not work. No, for me. I mean, I'm a writer. I mean, I'm just saying I can't.
You wouldn't write a file using this. I have to say, for casual use, this is great. I was just at a board meeting for the local independent school that I'm on the board of, and I was doing some. Used to be there were laptops all around. There's 20-some people in there.
Okay.
2 laptops. About 8 people didn't have anything, and about 8 people had iPads, and many of them with keyboards. There is a huge shift happening.
This suggests, by the way, that Microsoft's strategy is a good one.
Yes.
Because they're basically there's not going to be any such thing as, well, I should say that there will be things like this, but basically Windows 8 RT was designed with this keyboard from the ground up. In other words, we expect you to plug this thing into a dock of some kind and use it with a keyboard. In fact, some of these devices will be that primarily.
You don't think that that's? Do you think that's an interim, or do you think that that's really how they see people using it? It's not. It's not to wean people off of the desktop.
They'll always remember. There'll always be that market of people who need this stuff. I mean, I hate to keep quoting Steve Jobs, but he obviously had something good going on. And one of the comments that the guy made was about this car truck thing, and not everyone needs a truck.
Right.
Most people need a car, but a lot of people still need trucks, or will prefer trucks, right. And those things will be around forever. And honestly, if it's done correctly, there's nothing wrong with a whatever size screen that's basically a tablet, and you clip it onto a keyboard base, and it becomes a clamshell laptop type thing. I mean, we may look back on laptops, and kids will wonder I don't understand why the screen doesn't come off.
Oh, no, we already do that. I touch my laptop screen all the time. I go, whoa,
yeah, and that's the thing. So when I get on a plane and I want to read a book, which you would do on a tablet, or play a game, a touch game, and I was goofing around today with some of the Windows 8 games, which they're great. They work, and by the way, they work fine on a keyboard, and mouse too. But you can't necessarily type on a plane, or even if you could, maybe you just want some downtime. You can watch a movie, whatever. That stuff's great. But being able to arrive at a destination, sit down in a hotel or a coffee shop or wherever you're going, and plug in the keyboard base and get to work, best of both worlds. It's nice. And I think the ARM stuff and the RT stuff is about bringing those best bits of what's possible on a smartphone or a tablet to the PC world. Incredible battery life, incredible standby time, where this thing will be around for several hundred hours, not plugged in but not being used, still updating your email and all that kind of stuff in the background. And then you flip the thing open, it just comes on and you get to work, and it works great. I mean, it's kind of the opposite of the reputation of the PC, which we see as a very unreliable, slow, expensive, complex kind of device. And so, again, whether it's, look, 10 years down the road, maybe it's all Intel still. They figured it out. They responded, and they got into the game, and it did the right thing. Or it's ARM. Honestly, I don't think Microsoft or anyone else cares. But the point behind all of this stuff, I think, is just to get us there on whatever hardware platform that might be.
You mentioned that some people are going kicking and screaming. Who really seems to be going kicking and screaming is the OEMs. Already, Acer has warned Microsoft, this is a very bad thing you're doing. Toshiba says we're not going to do RT, right?
Well, the Toshiba thing was interesting because Microsoft came out with a blog post about their RT partners, and they left out a couple of them, which I was confused by, because I had seen a list of the RT machines that are going to come out for launch. And I knew that there were some companies missing from that list. And so in the article that I wrote about it, I mentioned those companies, and Toshiba was one of them. In fact, Toshiba had multiple machines coming. And so I don't know if it was that or whatever, but for whatever reason, within 24 hours, Toshiba actually issued a statement where they said, we were planning to do RT devices for the fall, but we were having problems getting parts. And it's not going to be able to happen in a timely fashion. And so for now, we're going to focus on Windows 8, but in the future, we'll look at doing RT as well.
Do you think it's an entrenched mindset in these companies? They're like everybody else saying, the desktop's not dead.
I think it's hard for traditional PC companies. I shouldn't say hard. Maybe hard is not the right word. I suspect that traditional PC companies, HP, Dell, Toshiba, actually, would be not so good at making ARM devices immediately if they were going to do it. HP, and of course, the way you communicate that to your customers is not to say, we have no freaking idea what we're doing, so we're not going to do it.
We'll wait until the parts are ready.
Or you say, well, our customers told us they wanted Windows 8, so that we're going to do what our customers want. And meanwhile, they're scrambling behind the scenes to hire people that know ARM. And maybe
and it does explain why Microsoft did Surface, because they had to lead the way. They had to tell these partners, look, this is it. See this? Here's a reference design.
Well, and I think it's notable, too, that the two biggest PC makers in the world have both come out publicly and said Surface doesn't concern us in the slightest.
HP and Lenovo both, right?
Yep, don't care.
They're saying they're saying we're making RT as well?
No, actually, so HP is not. They're the other company that said they're not. Lenovo is. Lenovo will have both Windows 8 and RT devices out at launch. But, Lenovo is obviously the ThinkPad maker.
No, Lenovo knows how to do it. Yeah, they know how to do it.
They make good hardware. Yeah, and they've been working with this kind of stuff for a while. They have not that anyone's bought these things, but they've been making both IdeaPad and even a ThinkPad Android tablets for a while, and I think they have some expertise in this area, and they're getting into the smartphone business as well. And I expect them actually to be a pretty big player in this market. And from HP's perspective, the Surface, they look at that and they see consumer toy. And HP says, we don't make consumer toys.
It's not our business.
Even though they actually make gaming PCs. But they're primarily a business PC maker. Right. And so HP's perspective is like, we don't need to worry about this. These things don't really directly compete with us. By the way, can you hear the church bells in the background?
Yeah, it's pretty.
It is pretty until it's 7 o'clock in the morning. And so the church is approximately 100 feet from this house, which seems like it would be really pretty, and it is.
Nearby,
but at 7 p.m.
Yeah.
At 7 p.m. and 7 a.m., they don't ring 7 times. They ring
peel
7 times, and then they ring for 5 minutes.
Dun, 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 dun. They're peeling. The bells are peeling.
Yeah, I've developed into quite a morning person on this trip.
Mong! I'm awake. I'm awake.
It's like, is there a Godzilla attacking the town? What's going on?
You are supposed to go to mass, Paul. You understand what they're telling you, right? This is not just like, hey, good morning. It's come on. We're waiting for you.
Leo, it's not the 1600s. That's all I'm saying. I don't understand.
We got a witch on a stake. We need some burning. Now, come on. Hey, I want to. We're going to take a break, but I do want to ask you, and I've been channeling Paul all week. I want to ask you about the very interesting rumor that there was going to be a $200 WinRT Surface.
I do have a thought on that.
Yeah, I thought you might. So I'm not going to say, but we'll find out about that in a moment. I've been channeling Paul all week. People say, what do you think? And I say, well, let me tell you what Paul Thurrott's going to say. So we'll find out. See if I was right. But first a look at a great product for anybody who's designing a web page, whether you're a photographer looking for a portfolio, whether you're a knitter looking for somewhere to show off her wares or his wares. Squarespace. Everything you need to create an exceptional website. It is all new. It's the new Squarespace. We've been calling it version 6. They did an iPad. They're just saying the new Squarespace. No number. Completely rewritten code. 50-plus newer improved features. Now, I really want to say up front, and I always forget to do this, Squarespace is two things, really. It's hosting. This is a web host, but on top of it, the best content management software out there. So you get kind of the best of both worlds. You get a web host that is rock solid, and we're always trying to crash Squarespace sites, and we just can't. So rock-solid web hosting combined with content management software that makes beautiful sites easy. You don't need to be a CSS JavaScript wizard. You drag and drop. It's also the latest thing. It's what they call adaptive design now, or responsive design. So when you put an image, for instance, on your web page, it resizes it to 7 different sizes so your site looks great on any device, whether it's a 27-inch display to a Windows RT tablet to a Windows phone. It just is the way it should be. There's not a separate mobile site. It's just your site looks great no matter where. And you have complete control with drag and drop. Now, if you know CSS, if you know JavaScript, of course, you can do all that. In fact, they have a great CSS code editor with syntax highlighting, things like that. But you don't need to. You can just drag and drop. They've got plugins for all the great social media sites. In fact, you can even embed a Google map in there with just a click of a button. Of course, if you've got an existing blog, they'll import it. And you're never trapped. You can always export it back if you decide to move on. Squarespace believes your data belongs to you. That's why it's the best hosting, the best software. And they make it so easy to try. Just go to squarespace.com and click the Try It Now button. You can try it for 2 weeks. You don't need a credit card or anything. You get access to the full new Squarespace 6 just by clicking the Try It Now button at squarespace.com. But I do want to point out, if you decide you like this, and I think you might, that it is possible for you to get a special deal. Go look at the pricing. So after you've tried it for 2 weeks, I do want you to try it first. Go look at the pricing. You will. This is hosting and software. Now the annual, they have month to month, but get the annual plan because you really save big. $8 a month for the basic annual plan. That's 20 pages, 500 gigabytes of bandwidth, 2 gigs of storage. Good for like a one-off site, something you're just going to do once. But if you're going to be like, say, doing I don't know, the SuperSite for Windows or something, this is what you want. The unlimited $16 a month plan when you buy yearly. For $16 a month, you get unlimited pages, unlimited galleries, unlimited blogs, unlimited bandwidth, unlimited storage, unlimited contributors. If you could do the Huffington Post for $16 a month. Plus, whenever you buy an annual plan, whichever plan you get, you'll get automatically domain name registration for free, and they'll hook it up so when you go to your site, myspecialsite.com, it all works. I think Squarespace has got it down. I don't know why anybody uses anything else. I want you to try it right now, squarespace.com. If you decide to buy, whatever plan you buy, we'll get you 10% off when you use our offer code, Windows 8. But that's why the annual plan is an even better deal, because 10% off the total amount. Squarespace.com. Try it free. You don't need a credit card. When you want to buy, remember us and use the offer code Windows 8. It really is everything you need to build an exceptional website. Okay. So where did this $200 rumor come from? Do you know? Was it a website?
I believe it was one of the gadget blogs. I don't remember which one.
I don't. I didn't even read the article. It's one of those
things. It gets quoted. Well,
that's the problem.
Lose it, but
everybody was saying it.
It's like single anonymous source from a blog.
It's such BS. I can't even believe it.
I know, it's crazy. I can't believe anyone believes this. The one little out, I guess I would give myself or anyone else who has called out the fact that this number is completely baloney is it's possible, I suppose, that it's $200 plus some monthly subscription thing. We all know Microsoft has some love with subscriptions, but if that's the case, then it's not $200. I just would point that out.
$200 subsidized like a phone. Oh yeah, sure. Well, that might make sense.
Yeah. So Microsoft's OEM partners are going to sell Windows RT devices in the fall that range in price from some amount to some other amount, and those amounts roughly correspond to, say, like how much the different iPads cost. The cheapest new iPad 3, is $499.
Right.
And to think that Microsoft would undercut one of their partners by that much money is inconceivable. It kind of throws egg on the whole notion of, Microsoft is just showing the other companies how it's done. Here's how it's done. You lose $300 in every one you sell. And you
make it up in volume.
We've never done the hardware before, but that's how it works in software, so we figured we'd apply that model. It just doesn't make any sense.
No.
So
it doesn't pass the sniff test. Unless Verizon is subsidizing it and they get a 2-year contract, or I guess they could sell it at a loss, but I don't see where the revenue is to make it up.
Did they? I don't even remember. But is there a version of the Surface that comes with 3G and 4G connectivity?
They didn't say anything. They didn't say anything.
All right.
I think it's Wi-Fi. I mean, we don't hide. Who knows? They could very well have that planned.
$200 is a Kindle. It's not a tablet.
It's a Nexus 7, which is a very credible tablet
for that size device. Yes, I
mean 7-inch tablet, but it's not.
There's no reason it couldn't be a $200 Windows RT tablet.
Let me play devil's advocate. Could it be Microsoft is so desperate to seed the market, the application market, that they're willing to take a loss on Surface under certain circumstances? No,
no, it's not, because this is mutually assured destruction. If Microsoft did this, I don't know where they would go, but I mean, we sort of wonder now. We know Acer's mad at them, and some other companies have said they're not mad at them. But come on, like $200, they can't undercut them by that much money.
And we know for a fact that the OEMs are selling it for closer to iPad prices.
I'm telling you that
somehow some information has permeated.
Yeah, that way. So it's look. Even if these guys all come in at $100 less than what they said they were going to, $200 is still way, way under what a mainstream Windows RT device is going to cost.
Yeah.
You can look right smack dab in the middle of the iPad price list for the middle of the Windows RT price list. It's just that's right where it is. And this is not even close. This is a different kind of product.
I would guess it'd be a premium over the iPad, maybe $50 more. I think that they're going to say it's a perceived value. Look, you get a cover with a keyboard. That's Apple charges $50 for that.
Okay, so assuming they sell it that way, it's not actually. It's possible that the base price of an RT tablet would not include the keyboard, because there are two different types of keyboard covers, and you can choose and you can pick colors, and maybe these are all add-ons that you buy. You buy all that stuff with an iPad too, of course. I mean, the actual selling price of an iPad is probably a couple $100 more, because you buy a case and a cover and keyboard, whatever. But it's not really the important bit. I mean, someone asked me this via email this week. He's noted to me that I have often said that the iPad is too expensive for what it is, and given that, if the Windows RT devices come in at the same price, would you also agree that they are also too expensive? And ultimately the answer has to be yes, because even though I might argue that the device itself and the operating system itself is more sophisticated than what you get with an iPad, the iPad's been around for 2.5 years. Has it been 2.5 years? Yeah, 2.5 years. And there's a huge ecosystem built up there. And it's not just software. It's all the services and the content and the hardware stuff that you can get. I mean, the iPad is an established thing. It's there. Anyone who buys into Windows RT right now is taking a pretty big chance. This is a brand new platform, and there aren't a lot of apps. There aren't any add-ons of any kind. There is no real ecosystem built around it. This is kind of a fledgling ecosystem. The iPad right now is a much safer choice than Windows RT, and so I think you do have to make the argument that it should be cheaper than the iPad. And
I don't see it being cheaper for some reason.
Yeah, I don't either. Yeah.
It'll either be the iPad or a slight premium over, but $200 makes no sense. It's ludicrous.
There will be a Windows RT device that's $200. It will be like a Nook ebook reader. It will be something you buy in CVS. I don't know. It's not going to. And for whatever it's worth, the Surface looks like a great device. I don't look at that and see bargain basement. That's, to me, is like the nice one. I mean, you can almost make the argument like, well, maybe I could get a Windows RT device for $500 or whatever, but this one's like $650, and I'm going to buy it because it's really nice.
Yeah.
You could almost make that argument. The Surface is not like the bargain trawler at the end of the market. This
is the premium product. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
And I want one. My nervousness. I really would like a Windows 8 Pro Surface, because I think that's cool. I'm a little nervous only because of the app ecosystem. If it were a rich, vibrant app ecosystem, I would say, oh, Windows RT, awesome. But I think that's an unknown, isn't it?
It's an absolute unknown. Yeah, definitely.
So I'd hate the only reason I say that, and I'm probably not alone in this, is I bought a playbook. I bought a lot of non-Android, non-iOS tablets. that never went
Remember,
anywhere.
yeah, there's another thing. It's worth pointing out. I just played down. When Apple came out with the iPad, one of the things they touted on this device was, oh, by the way, it runs iPhone apps, and you could run them in a little square in the middle of the screen, or you could blow them up and they look kind of terrible, but they would work. And the reason you do something like that, and the reason you tout that kind of a feature, is because that platform's new, but the iPhone had been around for 2 years with an app store, and had hundreds. Well, I don't know what they had at the time, tens or at least tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of apps, whatever it was. 2.5 years later, the iPad has developed into its own thing. But the beauty of that device was that all of those developers who were targeting the iPhone could very easily target the iPad.
Yep.
And they all not all of them, but many of them very quickly made what they would call HD versions of their apps.
Right.
They were scaled to the iPad screen size.
But, and your point is very well taken here. It wasn't a risk for buyers, because even though there were no HD apps yet, you knew it was going to be fine. And you knew you at least had the apps you needed, even though they were, blown up.
And you could buy the thing on day one and say, you know what, it doesn't matter. They're going to be there. Look at all these apps. Right. Now we look at Windows RT, and the situation is very different. Yes, there are, I don't remember the number, 100,000 apps, whatever it is, on Windows Phone. And yes, you could probably port many of them over to Windows RT or Windows 8 pretty easily. But it's not the same thing, is it? This is not the iOS we're talking about. This is a brand new thing. And even looking at the Windows 8 App Store, I mean, yes, I do see a couple of things that I sort of recognize from Windows Phone, but there's new stuff in there I've never seen before. And there will be electronic arts apps and games and things in there, I suppose, at some point. But there aren't any now, or any of these other major game developers. You don't really see this stuff. There's no Angry Birds in there now. There's no, well, they have things like Cut the Rope. They have, Fruit Ninja and things like that. But it's, yeah, okay. I mean, I can play that stuff on the web for free. I don't understand what's the
right.
So it's a chicken and the egg problem here. And so I'm not saying it's not going to happen. I'm not saying it's not going to be successful. It's just something you need to keep in mind. This is going to be a tough transition, and it's the reason why they pushed Metro into Windows 8 and didn't make it a separate product, because they could have done this awesome thing.
Right.
And the funny thing is, I think a lot of these people who are complaining about Windows 8 today, had they gone on that alternate approach, would have embraced Metro thoroughly for these other devices, and they would have been the only ones. And then that would have been the end of that. And we've done this before. We did Zune before. We know what that's like. No one will ever claim that the Zune HD wasn't a wonderful piece of hardware if they've ever seen it. The problem is no one's ever seen one, so they're like unicorns. We're not even sure they even exist anymore. But they were wonderful when they were around.
Those were the days.
The unicorns.
I need a virgin, a bunt pan, and an oven mitt.
Right.
And I'll see you in a fortnight with a unicorn in hand.
Right. Eyelash of a newt.
By the way, I noticed you didn't use the word Metro in that previous discussion. What are we calling it? What are we calling it?
I'm calling it Metro.
Okay, thank you.
I am gonna call it Metro.
You have to, because we need a name.
So the funny thing is, so we wrote this book about Windows 8.
Yeah.
And I've had these conversations with the guys from the Windows team over the past several months about names and terminology and what we call things. And they've always been reticent to call anything. They have names for some stuff, but not names for other things, And so they'll talk about that bar that comes up on the side, and they'll say, well, these are the charms. And then I'll say, okay, so this thing then is the charms bar. And they say, no, it's not the charms. And I say, what is it? And they say, this is the user interface that appears when you need to access the
place
charms.
where the charms are.
but it's a bar, yes. Visually, yes, it is kind of a bar. So it's the charms bar. No, it's not the charms bar. No. So we have these weird conversations.
That is weird. That is very weird.
Yeah. And the thing with Metro, it's very interesting. Microsoft, for whatever legal reason, is now not going to use the Metro name. I think we all
agree it's legal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dr. Pizza and I were talking about this last week.
Yeah.
It has to do with Metro AG, which is a big European company, and they do software. And so it makes sense. I understand that. But they should come up with another name.
To be honest, I don't understand that, but it doesn't matter. So
I think what we were saying, and just to catch you up on last week, is that Microsoft wasn't worried for itself, but maybe for the third-party developers who might use the name Metro, that they would be picked off one by one by Metro AG.
Jeez, can you imagine? So
Yeah. You don't want that.
that's okay. So actually, there's a side story about that we can get to, but they never called this thing Metro ever. They never once called it Metro. They would refer to, there was a Metro design language, which was the kind of style of the apps and experiences you would create for this new Windows 8 environment, which they were never going to name, that it would run on top of the Windows runtime, the new Windows runtime. And that was one of the things I tried to pin them down on very early on was, what do you call this thing? And it's just Windows. And I said, no, I mean, in other words, you have like the desktop, and then you have, and they would say it's Windows. I said, no, it's all Windows. All of it's Windows. But inside of Windows, you have a desktop and Windows. No. It would just go back and forth. And so when we were writing the book, Raphael and I, we had this discussion with Wiley. We said, look, they're not willing to nail down names on things. And so we're going to just call things things. And we're going to have a discussion right up front where Microsoft doesn't want to call these things anything, but we have to because we need to describe them in the book.
We need language. We need words.
We need language.
We're writers.
It's funny. On the flip side, every once in a while, Microsoft actually did a nice job of naming something. So, for example, you may remember because you're still using it, in Windows 7, that thing we used to use in the past,
Yeah.
They had this great feature. I don't know if you remember it. It was so long ago. Called Start. It's called, I even forget because I don't use it anymore. Called Start Menu Search, right?
Yeah, I love
Start
that.
Menu Search is one of the greatest features.
Yeah.
Greatest features ever. So in Windows 8, of course, the Start menu is gone, and it's replaced by this full screen Start screen. And so you might think, well, okay, they'll call this thing Start Screen Search, right? Because it's the replacement for Start Menu Search.
Right.
Okay, that makes sense. Except they don't. They call it Start Search. And they've retroactively started calling the search experience in Windows 7 Start Search. And this is one of those cases where I think, you know what? Actually, that's okay.
Yeah.
That's a nice name. Start Search. I like
it's
that.
actually good, yeah. And,
name.
to give them credit, Charms is a good name.
Right. But still, there's a container.
Yeah. Well, I understand. And you know what?
one
And you
might
know
say.
what? Whether Microsoft deems it appropriate or not is not really the issue because users are going to name it.
Yeah. So
And they're going to call it the
interesting
Charms
thing for
bar.
us-
They're going to call it Metro. I hate to say it.
Yeah. So we just decided because we have to constantly refer to different things. And to draw this
So you were
distinction-
saying the new SkyDrive interface? Okay, yeah. I'm looking at the new SkyDrive interface. That is, what do we call that?
They call it a modern new user interface that has the DNA of Windows 8 in it, Leo.
Yeah,
That's what they
Metro.
call it. It's called Metro. It's Metro. It's a Metro.
I mean, it's
style
even
user.
got. I love it. If I look at my camera roll, it's doing the Metro style rotation of graphics in there. I mean, this is great.
Yep. So the discussion we have very early in the book, right in the introduction, is Microsoft doesn't name things, but we do, and we're going to call this thing Metro.
Yes.
And we were able to add a very quick line where they say, even right at the end of the development of Windows 8, Microsoft announced that they had this legal problem. They weren't going to be able to call these things Metro. And you know what? That's their problem. It's not our problem.
Exactly.
We're going to call it Metro.
Right.
And that's what we call it. We call
I think
it Metro.
that's fine. I think that's completely how things are.
I just yeah.
One of the things I loved about being in radio, talking about technology so early in 1991 is people didn't have pronunciations for many of the words in technology because nobody had ever said them out loud. And so I got to choose. I'll tell you how it's pronounced because that's how I'm pronouncing it.
This is a problem I always had because I was well read, but not well spoken.
Yes.
Right. And so I would read these books that were maybe a little too advanced for my age, and I would realize later, sometimes much later in life, much to my horror, that the way I sort of assumed these words were pronounced were way off, way off.
Yeah, that happens to everybody.
Anyone from Boston has, but that's just the way it is.
Well, and I wonder how much of this ties to your earlier insight that Microsoft really isn't committed to Windows on the desktop. That really the product is Windows RT. And so,
well, I should say, by the way, they've never said this, right? So,
no, this is you, though.
Very early on, again, we had maybe the same conversation. I asked about the desktop. So I said, clearly, this thing's going away. And they said, no. We expect these things to coexist well into the future.
I wouldn't expect them to admit
said,
that.
Like through December? What are we talking about?
Well into the future. St. Patrick's Day, at least.
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't expect them to say that, but I think that it does. Actions speak louder than words sometimes, and I think that the marketing.
You don't come up with something like this because you're feeling creative this year.
Yes.
This is
thought out. They've been thinking about this. As you pointed this out a couple of weeks ago, I thought this was really astute, is all of this stuff has been in the works for years. This has been, Ballmer's been sitting there, waiting, as people say, you're an idiot, you haven't made a change, you're not doing anything for 4 years. He's been sitting there, I can't tell you about it, but there's something good coming along.
The other thing, too, is, this stuff is everywhere now, over Microsoft stuff. I mean, you got Outlook.com and SkyDrive with this new UI, Office 2013 and Office 365 with this new UI. It's Xbox 360, of course, the next version of Windows Phone. I mean, this is like one of those incredible renaissance years for Microsoft. I mean, it was a big deal in 1995, and this is the year it's not the year I got into writing. It was probably a year later, but it was a big year for me writing-wise because it just all fell on top of each other. It was like we were doing Windows 95, and then we were doing Plus for Windows 95, and then we were doing MSN, and then we were doing Office for Windows 95, and it was like this huge cascading.
We thought it would never end.
Yeah, and in a way, it never did. But the funny thing is, what's happening now is a much bigger deal than that, really. So. And it's weird because we still look back on Windows 95 as kind of the apex of the whole Microsoft thing.
This is the biggest.
This is a big deal.
No, we've been thinking is as big as, Windows 95. I think it's bigger. Is it as big
it's bigger.
Is it as big as the announcement of Windows period? Maybe. I think it really is a shift. I mean, Microsoft went from being MS-DOS to Windows. That was a big change. And it took years because Windows 1.0 was just MS-DOS. But eventually it completely changed the company. And I think this is, what's funny is Microsoft Office was originally written for the Macintosh, right? And then,
yes.
It became a.
They were always going to do one for each.
It became a big product for Apple first.
The Mac was a viable product long before Windows was, and so Excel came out first.
There have been these inflection points, but not very many in Microsoft's life, and this is a huge one. And I think you're right. I think it's a bet the farm moment.
It's silly because in a the boy who cried wolf kind of moment, they always talk about how they're betting the company on something, and it's like, no, you're not. We're betting the company on Zune. Really, you're betting the company on Zune. Like they would throw these comments out. They're betting the company on this. This is and it's notable because no one's ever actually said that.
Not this
to
time.
My knowledge, anyway.
That means they really are betting the company this time.
They're like, shut up, Bob. We got to keep that one secret. They really are. I think betting the company.
You know what? It's just like high stakes poker. When you got a crappy hand, if you're not very good, you overplay it. But when you have a good hand, you shut up.
You just try not to smirk. You're smiling. I can see you smiling.
And that's actually the worst tell of all. But as I have learned, much to my detriment. But I think that makes sense. They're not going to say we're betting the farm when they really are betting the company. They're not. That's the last thing they want to say. They want everybody to be confident.
I don't think there's anything in the history of Microsoft that equates to this. I mean, and not just you can make the parallels to different versions of Windows. There is no comparison. I mean, this is the first time they've ever changed everything at one time. The underlying platform, the UI, the different versions of hardware and so forth. I mean, this is just the biggest thing in the world for Windows. But I actually think this is the biggest thing ever. Microsoft. Microsoft made transitions in its history from developer tools to application software to operating systems. Web services and so on, but this is like everything in one giant bucket. It's just crazy how far-reaching this stuff is, and I really do feel like this is the biggest thing ever. And it's nice because the way that the Longhorn stuff imploded is the first time I think we can look back and say, that Longhorn stuff is looking kind of silly now, and it's nice because I think.
No, I think had they gone with a new file system and Longhorn and all of that stuff and this whole idea of object database oriented content, that would have been equally revolutionary. They lost their nerve, or the technology didn't work, and they retooled.
But had they done that, right, they still would have had to do what they're doing now. It might have been harder to do it because they would have been because what they would have arrived at is like BOS,
right?
Like we have a database-based file system, and like neat. Okay, that's nice. It's really technically advanced. By the way, everyone's buying iPads. Good for you with your object-oriented file system. Nobody cares.
This bothered me because I was very excited. And anybody who understands kind of the underlying technologies, that was a big step forward. There is a file system, ZFS. Is it ZFS? that is
It's like relational file.
Relational. It's brilliant. It has things like you can roll back. I mean, it's everything you want. And there was briefly a rumor that Apple might be adopting it in OS 10, and just like Microsoft, they turned their back on it.
Here's why: you don't need it. You just don't need it.
It's overkill.
But think about not to get it too far into database stuff, but if you think about the point behind a database-based operating system, a file system, and what the advantages would be and so forth, and then you look at what we have today in the Windows file system, basically just the nth version of the NTFS file system. We basically have everything we ever wanted. We have something that's fast and reliable. Yeah. We have something that's redundant. We have something that has database views, which we call libraries, by the way, in Windows 8 and 7. It's kind of like all the stuff we really kind of need from the database without any of the overhead of a database, and the complexity of a database.
It's really true. I mean, it's great. It's better. It's super amazing, sophisticated technology. You don't need it, so let's not.
You don't need it.
Let's not complicate
things.
Hey,
they launch spaceships that have Commodore 64 technology on them. I mean, what are we overthinking this? I mean, I don't know.
Sometimes, and that's really interesting. I don't know what it means, but I think that's very interesting.
I don't know. He really cares about something. I don't know what it is.
I don't know what it means. I think there's a rule. There's a technology rule in there somewhere. I just don't know what it is.
A maximum of some kind.
Yeah, there's a maximum there of some kind. It's Occam's file system. I don't know. It's just something.
File system. Yeah, there you go.
So one of the things we learned in the Samsung lawsuit, which has been so great because we've found out so much about how these companies run, particularly Apple, is that Microsoft is paying money to Apple for it's cross-license. They cross-license patents.
They're cross-licensing. That means they're paying each other, essentially.
Yeah.
Right. But see, what you just said is funny to me because this is the way it's always reported. So I read this quote from the guy who said this on the stand, I believe in the New York Times, where he said, we have a cross-licensing agreement with Microsoft. We agreed not to copy each other.
That's the interesting line. We agreed not to copy each other.
And we're cross-licensing. And it's for and to be more specific, this is for the technologies that Apple wanted Samsung to license and that Samsung refused because it was too expensive. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But how do you report that? In other words,
that Microsoft is paying Microsoft Apple money. Yeah.
Agreed not to copy the iPad. Wait, what? Actually, I mean, there wasn't one headline that said Apple agreed not to copy Windows Phone, because that's the same thing.
Yeah, but I don't think that happened.
No, well, what? I mean, I'm
There's
just
a
saying.
reason for that. I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. I forgot what show I was on.
No. Listen, seriously, I actually. Windows Phone may sell like 1/1000th of the iPhone or whatever, but there is stuff in there that is so awesome. And is, by the way, being ripped off by other companies, including Apple in small ways, but Google in more profound ways. It's interesting to me that they can't actually copy some of the great integration features that are available in Windows Phone, maybe, assuming that's what was cross-licensed. I'm not really sure. But it's
that's the question.
True
that's the question. When did this happen? Because I think it could also make a very strong case that one of the reasons Windows Phone was so innovative is because Microsoft had made this agreement. Okay, we're not going to do an iPhone. What are we going to do then?
Okay, so I think the only argument I would have against that, because that's a very, this is the
Apple-centric point of view.
But actually, honestly, I think there's a very basic truth that's not hard to overlook, which is, Microsoft could have just done the also-ran thing and made another iPhone clone. But, they did that. They had Windows Mobile. Like, they did Windows Mobile 6.5. This is Windows Phone was kind of a refutation of that. It was like this. Right. We can't be another Android. We really do have to do something unique and different. And I think the thing that's neat about Windows Phone in particular is that it's not just different to be different. It's a lot of the stuff that's different is actually quite a bit better.
I think the strongest argument for Windows Phone is that it's a fresh way of looking at solving these problems that in many cases is superior. I think that's absolutely true. I think you could make the argument, though, that one of the reasons they were compelled to do that, maybe they learned a lesson from 6.5 and said, "Oh, we can't do that again."
Sure. Yep.
Or maybe they made an agreement not to make it look anything like the iPhone.
I think one of the things they probably agreed not to do was have rounded
no rounded
icons.
Rectangles.
I'm sure that was one of the things. And so we have squares. A square is not a circle,
It's a squircle.
I should think. A square is not a rounded rectangle.
A squircle. That's why the Zune was so darn good. It could be nothing like the iPod. No, I don't think this is that old an agreement.
So, no, I don't think that was covered by the agreement.
No. It's interesting, though. And you're right. I think you're right. I mean, the press is very Apple-centric. And so the reporting is, Microsoft pays Apple. Microsoft agrees not to copy
never
Apple.
Saw one headline that said, by the way, here's the fairest headline. Actually, let me just, I'll tell you, this will be impossible to bring up in a timely fashion, but let me see if I can find my own headline for this.
The fairest headline is the one that Paul Thurrott wrote himself.
But here's my headline, right? Not Microsoft-centric. This is what I wrote.
Yes.
Apple and Microsoft cross-licensed patents and agreed not to clone each other's products.
It is. That's the fairest. And that's closest to the quote.
It's like, exactly.
Yeah,
I mean,
this is not,
I didn't write Apple agreed not to copy Microsoft's products, but that's what everyone else wrote.
Right.
On the flip side.
Right. That's fair. And the truth is, we don't know. We don't know when the agreement was made. We don't know what they agreed not to copy. It could all have been underlying code.
I'm actually fascinated that Apple to discover that Apple licensed anything to anybody. I mean, they've been very antagonistic for the most part.
Well, the reason that came up in court is to prove that they were willing to license to Samsung, and Samsung decided not to. That's the whole point.
Right.
To tell the jury, no, look. I mean, admittedly, it was expensive, but
it was expensive, actually. So tell me, where does the line between expensive and extortion happen?
But we were willing to. It was going to be $30 a phone, but we were willing to do it.
You don't even make $30 a phone. It's like, what are you talking about?
I'm really crazy. This is completely off topic, and we're gonna move on. But I'm just curious, what do you think of who's in the right on this one? Have you been following it closely?
I have. I'm fascinated by this case, and the reason is simple. Very rarely do these things get this far.
Right.
And this thing has been like Godzilla and King Kong going at it. One of those horrible old Japanese movies. Like they're like just pulling out the stops. Like they're like trying to embarrass each other. And I actually agree with the judge made comments yesterday, I guess it was, where she basically said, "Listen, you guys need to talk privately and settle this, because I don't think either one of you are going to like how this comes out. Mm-hmm. You are both arguing that you have intellectual property in your products. Got it. You do. Agreed. I think there's no doubt that Samsung bald-facedly copied Apple's design. Mm-hmm. It is a unique case in that Apple did not take them to court for infringing on specific technology patents. They took them to court for infringing on what they called their intellectual property rights of design.
Trade dress.
Very, very interesting.
Yeah.
But I also think it's
one of the reasons you don't see them go this far is because of the kinds of revelations we're getting. There's so much goes on in discovery that is now public that you might not want.
Given Microsoft's rich history in court, I've seen the usual calm, cool, and collected guy on stage like squirming under the hot light of a courtroom questioning, and you see guys like Scott Forstall or these Apple engineers and so forth, just kind of not handling it very well. It's not good for anybody, for this kind of thing to happen, except for people like you and me. It's awesome,
and the lawyers love it.
Well, the lawyers, okay, sure, but so I think Apple has a good case, but it's not like one of those slam dunk Apple wins. I think they're both going to lose something here. And this is potentially very damaging, because imagine if the jury came back, or the judge, or whoever eventually decides on this, because there's also some weirdness with this trial where the judge has indicated that if she doesn't like what the jury comes out with, she might just change the verdict.
She's been very activist in this whole
bizarre,
thing.
Yeah. So I think her intention is to slap them both down to prevent this kind of thing from happening again, because there's a very real possibility that Apple will losing is not the right word, but that Apple will be prevented from charging other companies with copying their design in the future, would open the floodgates to that kind of copying.
Right.
And then in Samsung's case, there's the very real possibility that they're just copying, and that they will be seen as this unimaginative, also-ran company that, your products are so much like ours that people don't even know they're not Apple products. And then they're kind of like the butt of jokes. So like that, was it like Franklin Computer or whatever it was that came out with this Apple clone, back in the early 80s or whatever. Like, it's like, seriously, like this, it's just cheap knockoff stuff, And so I think it's fascinating either way. I mean, I think the right thing to happen is that these guys settle privately and don't allow this to come to conclusion.
We're past that point. I can't imagine that happening now.
I don't know.
Well, my prediction is Apple will win.
Yeah.
But Apple's asking $2.5 billion in damages. I think Apple will win, and the jury will say, yeah, it was copied. But you know what? The actual damages are slight.
Are insignificant because you're outselling them like 100 to 1 in this tablet space or whatever.
So they'll award millions of dollars, but not billions. And they'll say, you're right. And the real thing that concerns me and that I would hate to see is an injunction against Samsung product sales in the U.S. That's the longer-term risk.
Yeah, they're already moving to change their products. I know they have this Samsung Note 10.1 that just came out where, they're starting to just do this. And they can say, if they're ruled against, I mean, Samsung can say, whatever, we've already changed our products. It doesn't matter.
Right. Yeah, the injunction against sales of the Nexus phone, for instance, was really just prior to the actual trial. And the point of the judge was, well, okay, there's some merit to this. We're going to before you can continue to sell this phone, we're going to let the jury decide. I think
this is the thing that we were denied on the Microsoft side, because Barnes and Noble and Microsoft were barreling toward a court case, and then not only settled but became like BFFs, and like huge.
That's why you always have settlements. It's unpredictable. No attorney can say what the result of this case is going to be at all. And B, you lose a lot in just all of the not merely cost, but the cost to the employees.
I actually think, honestly, I don't think that mainstream America is like following this exactly, but
you know what, you saw the Conan O'Brien Samsung copying Apple thing. I think mainstream America is aware of it. I was surprised.
Okay. Well, I mean, to the extent of some of the Apple engineers and executives who've been on the stand. I mean, I think that stuff is very damaging.
I agree.
To the company.
Apple does not want to reveal this stuff. They're very secretive.
And right. It's just bad. I mean, there's been so many things revealed. Apple, for a company as secretive as Apple, I mean, I think this has been a big problem, and I would expect them to make this go away.
Really? You think even this late in the game there might be a settlement? I mean, it's almost over.
The judge requested, and the lawyers complied, or said they would comply, that the CEOs of the companies talk by phone.
Oh, interesting.
And see if they can't make this stop.
God, I'd love to hear that conversation.
I know. Yeah.
Wow.
I hate you. I hate you so much.
No, they already had extensive meetings between the two CEOs. Remember, the Samsung CEO came to San Francisco and sat down with Tim Cook for several days.
Yeah. Although, actually, so the guy who's CEO of Samsung now is a different person.
Oh.
That guy moved along.
Okay. All right. Maybe there's a chance.
You never know.
I think everybody's making the calculation. Well, could we lose? What could we lose if we lost?
Yeah. Right.
And you don't get a settlement unless one side believes that the risk of not settling is higher than the risk of settling, the cost of settling.
I think this is a great case of the risk of this is too great for both these companies.
Yeah, it is now. Except kind of most of the juice is already leaked out.
I know. It's bizarre. The money is just like an afterthought.
Oh, it's not about money. Oh, come on. Samsung's made so much money on their phones that even the full $2.5 billion is not a huge amount. And they're going to make more. I think their bigger fear is injunctions. But as you said, they'll probably just make some changes, some cosmetic changes. I think Apple, no matter what happens at this point, in a way, Apple's the loser because of so much has been revealed about Apple's process, and some of the shine is off the Apple.
And cast the lie to some of their assertions, like, well, we don't get feedback from users. Yeah. We tell users what they want. Test. Well, actually, as it turns out, that's not true. There's been some revelations of those kinds. Yeah,
I mean, I think that's costly.
But that's why it's fascinating.
That's why it makes it great for us. We're having fun.
That's why I pay attention to it. It's just fascinating.
So you're in France right now. Then you're going to go to New Zealand. Well, you are a traveling man.
I know, but it means I'm going to miss the Windows Phone 8 event on September 5 in New York City, which corresponds to the opening day of Nokia World, which is in
it's a Nokia
Europe somewhere. Yeah, so it's a Nokia event, and so I think it's going to be basically them announcing their Windows Phone 8 devices, right? But it's possible. I'm just making this one up. I have not heard this from anyone, but how interesting would it be? I think a lot of us are holding out hope that Nokia will also come out with a Windows 8 or Windows RT tablet that is based on the design of their Lumia devices. With that same like kind of polycarbonate, single
that
color
would be a
unibody
competitor
shell.
to the Surface. I would love to see that.
Yeah, so I'm wondering, it'd be interesting.
Ooh, I'm intrigued. Well,
too.
I've heard they have the internet in New Zealand. I'm not sure, but
yeah. Well, it's got to be at least as good as the internet here.
it can't be any worse than France, baby.
Like rub two sticks together and hope for the best.
Do you have to? Do you have to put a little euro coin in a box every 10 minutes?
Actually, so here's the thing. So after extensive study of this topic, and I mean literally extensive study, what I've discovered is that even in rural areas of France, you can basically get this thing called, it's a live box. It's an ADSL connection. It's 5 megabits, down, and 1 megabit up.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Which is fine.
Yeah.
It's fine. And for the purposes of what we need to do here and my work stuff, that would be fine. I mean, and we had this, we went to hotels and bed and breakfasts, and I talked to some other people who live here. I heard the same thing everywhere. The thing is with where I am right now is that we just happen to be at the far end of the line. So we're as far as you can be from the repeater or whatever they call these things. So we're getting like 200 kilobits per second, 0.2 megabits. And so it's just for upload. So the upload speed here is just
And of course, that's what matters for us for Skype.
Yeah. And so that's I think the problem we've had here. So, but everywhere else I've been here in France on this trip, the internet has been better than this. So this is just a random location.
Of course I'm being silly. I think, in truth, in most places, New Zealand probably has good internet. Hey, Trey Ratcliff moved there. He's in Queenstown, for crying out loud, the end of the earth. And he's pretty happy, so I can't be too bad. Unless he moved there to get away from the internet.
Right.
It's a possibility.
I wanted to live in Hobbiton.
That's actually where he's living.
Sure it is.
Yeah. No, that's where they shot it, and I think that they've got, it's beautiful, and I think that's probably the reason Trey moved there.
Oh, it's going to be beautiful. I'm actually worried to see how beautiful it is.
He has. I'll find it while you talk about share your thoughts about traveling. He has a video time lapse he did of Queenstown that is stunning.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'll find it.
I discovered on my last day of my trip here that my camera has an unbelievable panorama function, which I wish I'd known about like 3 weeks ago.
Oh crap!
Yeah. This is so awesome. So the only panorama I made was like the view out the bedroom window, and it's beautiful looking,
What kind of camera?
But it's just like a point and click Panasonic camera. I have to say, I wasn't going to buy another camera. My other camera died. This one it's one of those phones that has, cameras that has a very nice optical zoom. It's something like a 20x optical zoom or whatever. It's crazy. It's like a spy camera.
Yeah, I've seen that one.
It's got GPS. The battery life is fantastic. I mean, I could take several hundred photos in a day and it's still on like 2 bars. It's just really, really worked out well. But, I for all the travel that I do, I've just never gotten good at it, and it really bothers me. I bring too much stuff. I'm over-prepared.
Yeah, me too. I always overpack.
And I can't it's technology-wise especially. I mean, I'm like compulsive about it, and I try really hard. I was talking to my kids today about the trip home we're taking and whether they wanted to load up their devices with movies and everything, and they couldn't have cared less. Like, I got the games and this thing, and I'm like, yeah, but don't you want to make sure? Like, no, not really.
Kids today, they don't appreciate overpacking like you and I.
Don't care. Yeah,
they're so blasé about technology. I hate that. So this is Trey. It's on Reddit. It's actually on YouTube, but he put a link on Reddit. Trey Ratcliff is living in Queenstown.
Why would he ever want to move there?
I can't understand. Now, for those of you listening, actually, I know for some reason I'm not getting the audio. Oh, I know why, because I've set it up to do something weird. But it's really he's got this great dramatic soundtrack, and he's doing time lapse, which Trey's never done before, of the Queenstown mountains and the skyline and the weather, and it's winter there. But
yeah, I know.
It's beautiful. And I presume that he was able to upload this, so he must have some internet access. Where are you going in New Zealand? Are you
parcel to Australia?
Are you going to Wellington?
That's a good question.
Auckland?
That's a good question. It's one of those.
One of them. One of them cities.
I need to. It's hard for me to wrap my head around this because I've been traveling so much, but I'm going to wrap this up, when I get home. But
yeah. Well, that's fun.
Yeah.
Now, what about Build? Are you going to go to that?
Yeah. this is going to be a kind of a complex trip because we have Mary Jo and I both have to be at Connections that same week, but the important stuff for us in Build is going to be in the first half of the week, and then
do they overlap?
Yeah, they're like the exact same week. It's just horrible that they did that, but fortunately for us, we have just some minor speaking things we need to do at Connections. We can do that at the end of the week, and so I'm probably going to come out the week before. I'm probably going to be there for a week or 10 days because I just haven't gone recently, and there's a lot of people I need to catch up with over there. So I'll
over there is Seattle area.
That's Redmond. Sorry,
yeah.
Yep. And hopefully Raphael will be living there by then.
He's moving there. Oh, all the better to hack you with, Mr. Gates.
Yeah.
Okay,
So,
cool.
so that's going to be an interesting week as well. That whole thing.
Build sold out in 1 hour. We talked about this last week. There seems to be now a kind of competition between Apple, Google, and Microsoft about whose developer conference sells out faster.
Okay, but so how many people went to WWDC?
I think it was 5,000, 7,000?
300, 5,000, yeah, something like that. So how many people, we don't know how many people were let into Build. Was it 100?
Right.
I don't even,
they didn't even say.
I'm not be sarcastic, but we don't know. I mean, I assume it was some thousands, but this is the first time they've ever had a show of this magnitude at their campus. And having visited their campus, I'm not quite clear on how they're going to do this because they don't really have a big convention center.
They don't really? I'm surprised. Huh.
No, I mean, they have buildings that are set aside for groups and so forth, and I can kind of, I mean, but they're just small. I mean, these are small areas, so I'm curious to see how they do this.
Well, you'll report back, I'm sure. And I would guess of all the Build conferences, this is going to be the most exciting for developers because this is about Windows 8, right? Or is it not? Or is it about Windows 9?
Well, so Windows 8 is going to be the major part of it, but it's also about Windows Phone 8, Windows Azure, Office 365. It's the full Microsoft. Actually, Xbox too is in there, and so it's the whole stack.
It's the whole ecosystem. Wow.
Yeah, and I think that's the point. I mean, in the same way we were talking about Metro and how it's kind of bleeding into everything Microsoft does, this is a chance for developers to kind of wrap their heads around not just Metro, which is kind of just a user experience thing, but rather the way that all these bits and pieces can integrate with each other is potentially very exciting. I mean, Microsoft has a big advantage in that they make a phone, they make a computer thing, they make an Xbox, they make online services. This stuff all works together, and this is a nice chance for them to kind of tie it all together and do that final mile thing.
Cool. That'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
We have your, and by the way, for those of you watching the video, I've just been playing this time-lapse Trey Ratcliff.
That's awesome.
Somebody was saying, is that what his view is out his window? And yes, it is. In fact, there's a little bit of this clip, which is his view out his window, and it's just spectacular. He says he has a 2-bedroom guest house. So, Paul, if you ever want to get away.
Maybe I'll stay with him when I go.
What a view! Look at that. Now I know why he moved there. I couldn't understand. Trey's got 2 young children. He's got a fantastic career as a photographer. He says I can live anywhere, so he chose that. It's awesome. 30 days. If you want to watch that, it's 30 days and 30 nights in Queenstown. It's on YouTube, on Trey's YouTube channel, which is Stuck in Customs.
I have a panorama off the back of the.
Can I see your panorama?
It's on. Yeah, you can, but it's on Facebook.
Well, I'm your Facebook friend. I'll check it out.
You are. Yes, you are.
Yes, I am.
Enjoy. You can enjoy that.
I shall enjoy the scene from out of Paul's bedroom window. Hey, our show brought to you today by our good friends, and Audible.com is really a good friend of the traveler. The best audiobook store in the world, and over 100,000 titles. I'm a huge Audible fan, as you know. So is Paul. Paul's a regular Audible listener. I just finished this morning. In fact, I was a little late for the show. You know why? The last 10 minutes of The Stand.
Oh, The Stand. Okay. So that must have been, like 43 hours long?
It was! It was the longest book I've ever listened to. It went on and on and on. So I finally heard the end of The Stand.
That's incredible.
So I need a new book.
This is an old book.
Actually, give me a recommendation. I'd love to.
This is for my son, Mark. My son is not a reader, and I don't mean to say like that's disappointing to me, but I am a huge reader.
No,
and
it's the generation.
He's not a reader.
Same thing. Mine.
Not a reader.
Yeah, yeah.
And so he has a summer reading list, and we looked over it, my wife and I, and made some recommendations. And he actually read a Stephen King book, which I thought he would be really into, and he was kind of like, whatever. And so for the next one, the second book, he picked The Andromeda Strain.
Oh, great book.
Right.
Oh, he's going to love that.
Well, he burned through it in 2 days.
It is. It's a short book, yeah.
This is the first time in my son's life he actually went to read without being told to do so. That's
so awesome.
Decided he would keep reading it and would read it of his own volition and would finish it and wanted to talk about it. And it was just so fascinating. Now, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, depending on how you look at these things, the version of the Andromeda Strain that's available on Audible is actually abridged. It's only 3 hours long, although the reviews are generally very positive. And as one of the people here put it, it kind of cuts away all of the boring bits, I guess. So maybe it's closer to the movie version, which is also quite good, by the way. But it's been a while since I've read the Andromeda Strain. I've not read every single book by Michael Crichton, but I've read almost everything by Michael Crichton. And
this was his first, wasn't it? It was definitely his best.
1969-ish.
Yeah.
It's really old. And my son also has a nice sense of humor around things that are old. You know, he often talks about how everything that I experienced when I was growing up was in black and white. I was actually, if you don't mind this, because this might be a funny story for you. He was making fun of what a nerd I was. I was joking with my friend Jeff about we went to Mont Saint Michel, which is this incredible castle.
Oh, so great! I'm so glad you got to go. I love Mont Saint Michel.
It looks like something out of the Lord of the Rings movies.
It's beautiful.
Actually.
Yeah.
So we were walking through an incredible room, and I said to my friend Jeff, I said, "This is the room where Boromir tried to steal the ring from Frodo." And my son imitated me in a way that was so abusive and hilarious. Right, but you gotta. But what's beautiful about the way he imitated me was the word that, in other words, the part he left out, the part he changed wasn't the nerdy names of the guys.
Yeah,
he got those right. So what he said was, "This is the room where Boromir tried to steal some nerdy thing from Frodo." I was like, "This is so perfectly beautiful," you know. Yeah.
Oh, it makes me cry. So anyway, my son does the same exact thing to me. You know what got him into reading a little bit more was Daniel Suarez's books. He loved Demon and Freedom, and the new one I gave it to him.
By the way, so the new one's very good, but I have to say it's actually I think he's picking up the mantle of Michael Crichton.
I think so too.
It's basically technology gone bad is the theme, you know.
Right.
And that book was written almost like a movie script, which is some of Michael Crichton's books felt like.
Mm-hmm.
But
I mentioned that we interviewed Daniel last week on Triangulation. I said your books are so visual, and he said, "Well, they've optioned the first two, and he's hopeful that they'll."
I can't imagine how they're going to make those books into movies, but
tough to do.
But the new one I could actually see. Like that to me makes sense,
visual.
and very topical with the the unmanned drone stuff.
Did you get Andromeda Strain in France, or did you get it before you left? Because I don't see it on the U.S. Audible.
Oh, my God, I did get it here. So, actually...
It's not available in the U.S. I got bad news for you.
Oh, no.
There is other Crichton stuff. But
I have a link to it, right? Let me click on...
let me click the link.
Try clicking the link.
Right. That's a good point. I didn't try clicking on the link. Let me...
No, it says... Yeah, I'm actually... It's funny. I'm actually getting an invalid thing in this...
Well, there's something happened lately, because we were talking about Salem's Lot. And I wish I downloaded it when you recommended it, because it's now these rights revert. You can't get it. These rights revert, and I think
swear to God, so I obviously have a link to this book,
right?
But it says product not available. That's unbelievable.
So between the time you downloaded it, maybe it was just France, and the time, by the way, this is not Audible. Believe me, Audible wants you to get every book you're interested in.
Oh no, actually, so there could be books written on what works and what doesn't work when you travel, and it's really interesting because, and here's the weirdest one. You talk about like Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Video. None of that works in France. Zune stuff doesn't work. The iTunes stuff works fine, no problem at all. But the weirdest one of all is I have a Nexus 7 tablet. Everything in the Play Store is in French, and if I can't rent a movie here for the tablet, it's in what they call VF which is version français.
Oh dear!
And so I could download an American movie, but it would be
in VF
with dubbed into French, so worthless. But I have also the Nexus smartphone from Google. That one, everything's in English. It's American. I can rent stuff. But I can't do it from the tablet.
Huh,
so I have
weird.
2 Google devices on the same network. One of them is in French, and one of them is in American English. I have no idea why. So the Andromeda strain. I literally added this to the notes today, and here we are hours later, and it's not there.
That's all right. There's plenty of other great books, including other Michael Crichton titles like Prey and Time. I read Timeline. That was kind of interesting. It's a time travel book.
My favorite Crichton books actually are Timeline and the first Jurassic Park.
Yeah, those are on there.
Timeline is just... I happen to love Timeline.
Here's the deal. Go to audible.com/windows. You'll see a smiling picture of me and some, they have some good choices. I think they know these are the nerds coming here because they've got Stephen King, Jerry Pournelle's The Mote in God's Eye. They've got Lucifer's Hammer. They've got Michael Lewis, Moneyball. They've got More Information Than You Require, John Hodgman's book. Solaris, which was one of your recommendations. So I have a feeling these...
I was going to say, I'm sorry, you're literally reading...
These are all of yours, aren't they? They must be paying attention. Yeah. Anyway, you get to choose from 100,000 different books. There's a great Windows Phone app. There's an iPhone and Android app as well, even a Kindle Fire app, which I love because their whole library is available for download at any time. You got to try Audible if you haven't tried it yet, and I can't imagine there's many of you. Audible.com/Windows.
That's so funny.
Well, what happens is the publishing rights revert. It might be back tomorrow. Everybody's listening to this saying, well, what are you saying? It's still available. It's available there. And I think that's just because, the contract ran out. They have to pull it. And then when it renews, they do it again.
Yeah, but this was literally like 3 hours ago. So it's just strange.
What are the chances of that? That's what I ask you.
Oh, well.
Paul, your pick of the week.
I have nothing but picks. I have 4 software picks of the week.
Pick.
So the first one is the Windows 8 RTM 90-day evaluation.
Yeah.
Good and bad news. I mean, obviously it's Windows 8, so you can run it today. It's the Enterprise version, which is the highest end version they have. That's nice. You get all the features and everything. The problem is there's no way to take this and make it legal later. So if this had been, say, Windows 8 Pro,
that's frustrating.
At the end of October, you could buy a key and just run it, and you'd be good to go. You could just keep going. Unfortunately, in this case, they're not going to let you do that. There's no way to do it, and so eventually, it just expires. But it gives you a chance. You could run this for the next couple of months,
and it will be available for sale for $40 in less than 90 days.
Right,
so it's just
don't understand what you're getting into, but it is there if you want it. So.
That's great.
You don't have to be part of MSDN or TechNet, to get this now.
Final bits await.
Yes. The second pick is a related one. This is the final version of Visual Studio 2012 Express for Windows 8. And this is the way that you develop Windows 8 apps, as we call them now, or Metro-style apps.
Wait a minute. Microsoft's site still says Metro-style apps.
Yes.
Yes.
Curious.
I'm puzzled.
I don't think they've gotten around to changing everything yet. I know.
That's pretty funny.
The reason that's weird, Leo, is because that site just went live 2 days ago.
Did they not get the memo? I don't...
Yeah, it's strange. So it includes a bunch of stuff, but obviously the big thing is Visual Studio, and also the version of Expression Blend, which is the visual designer, for Windows.
Is this free?
And
all of this?
Yeah, this is free, and I think this, in combination with that Charles Petzold book, which is not free but is very inexpensive and being updated over time, would be a nice way to learn how to develop Windows 8 programming. You have to do it on Windows 8 too, and so again, you can kind of tie these things together. Windows 8 RTM Enterprise, Visual Studio 2000 Express, and Charles Petzold book and a cup of coffee. It'd be good to go.
That's interesting. You have to do it on Windows 8. I presume you could do it on the Windows 8 eval copy. I mean, right?
Yep. Yes, you could. Yep.
Get out there. We need more apps.
So the third pick is I was, as I always am when this happens on Windows Phone because it's so rare, I was ecstatic to discover what turns out to be a set of updates for my Lumia 900. And so if you live in the U.S. or Canada and you have a Nokia Lumia 900, Microsoft and Nokia have delivered a set of updates. And so what this amounts to is I had to kind of really wade through this to understand what I was getting here, but there is a set of updates that amount to that Tango update to Windows Phone 7.5. So basically the very latest version of Windows Phone 7.5. Also a Nokia update, and this is a couple of different things, but the big one is they appear to, I don't want to use the word fixed, but they appear to have improved the camera. I would say that of all the stuff going on with the Lumia 900, my one kind of serious complaint, the one thing I was really hoping was going to be better, given their history with this kind of stuff, was the camera. And the camera has been somewhat disappointing. This, actually, I played it with it a little bit more since I wrote about this morning, and I have to say, I'm not saying it's not like iPhone 4S quality quite, but this is actually a big step up. Somehow through software, they have done something wonderful with the camera. And that alone, I think, is worth getting this update. The other thing they've done is kind of fix some of the side button stuff. So one of the features in Windows Phone that's been around since the beginning is called... it's called what? It's called, I don't know what it's called, but it allows you to hit the button on the side and get into the camera without unlocking the phone. Pocket to picture is what it's called. And other phones have sort of copied this feature since, but Windows Phone had it first. And it was broken on the Lumia 900, but now it works. And so that's a nice way to, obviously quickly take a photo. So definitely check that stuff out. To get it, all you have to do is plug your phone into your computer. You have to have the Zune PC software because that's how updates occur. And it will happen actually semi-automatically. There's 3 updates. You have to kind of do them in sequence, so it will handle it for you automatically. But I ended up, stupidly, I was just about to go to bed, discovered this existed, plugged the thing in, and then ended up staying up another 45 minutes doing nothing but watching it, slowly back up and, install all these updates. But a lot of stuff going on there, so that's cool.
And finally,
I don't remember when this came out anymore because, again, the last couple of weeks has been a whirlwind for me, and maybe this was discussed last week. I don't recall, but much to my surprise, at some point last week, Microsoft announced something called Windows Essentials 2012.
I don't think we did talk about this. We mentioned that it's no longer live. But,
yeah, and so I had talked to these guys about this product a few weeks back. I didn't realize it was coming out this quickly, but one of the questions I had was what were they going to do with some of these existing apps, because people were concerned that some of their favorites are going to go away, like Photo Gallery, Movie Maker, Windows Live Writer, etc. And it's interesting because they've renamed it to Windows Essentials. Most of the apps now are just the name of the app. They don't say Windows or Windows Live or anything. I was told previously they would just be called Microsoft whatever. So it's like Microsoft Photo Gallery, Microsoft Movie Maker, and so forth. Those 2 apps have been fairly significantly updated and are great. They've always been the kind of the high points of the suite. The other apps, not so much. I mean, there isn't really much going on. That minor update to Messenger, the instant messaging client. But the stuff is basically still in there. So if you were worried about something like Windows Live Writer, which is Microsoft's blogging tool, a lot of people use that thing and love it. It's still there. I believe in that case, it's still actually called Windows Live Writer. I think it's kind of a hint that they're not really updating it anymore, but they're still giving it away. So this Essential Suite has always been really great. It's always a little screwy and weird how they provide it, but it's free and it's a bunch of great apps. I should say applications for the Windows desktop, and obviously this is the best version yet. So the only downside to this is if you do use Windows Live Mesh, you can't install this because this will uninstall Live Mesh and installs the SkyDrive app instead. And so with the previous version of Windows Live Essentials, you could have both running side by side. With this version, they actually do get rid of Live Mesh. And of course, Live Mesh will be heading out at some point in the future, near or otherwise. But in this version, if you want this version of Essentials, unfortunately, you do have to give up Live Mesh.
Yeah, I think we mentioned that. But you can replace it with everything that they do, right?
Yeah, I've written an article since about doing that. And the most important bit, I think there are 2 bits. One you can do easily, one you can't. So one of the big complaints is, Windows Live Mesh has a remote desktop tool. It's great. You can replace that with free tools. So there's something called LogMeIn Hamachi, which is basically a VPN program. This will allow you to use the built-in remote desktop software in Windows to do remote desktop, PC to PC over the internet for free. So that works. That's great. The other, well, I guess there are 2 other bits. Live Mesh allows you to have sort of arbitrary syncing of folders, and so you could have like one folder over here, one folder over here, one folder over here. You can't do that with SkyDrive. They are going to add the ability to determine which folders sync to the PC in the future. They don't have that yet. And then the other one was just sharing. I mean, Raphael and I used Windows Live Mesh is sharing capabilities to share our folders for the book, for each version of the book. And in SkyDrive, you can do that through the web interface, but you can't do it through the desktop app. And I don't know if that's coming or not. If it doesn't, we're going to have to figure something out for whatever we do next. But we did use Live Mesh through this book, and I guess we'll see going forward. But those are the bits that are a little different.
These things happen.
And you know what?
What?
My internet connection stayed up the whole time.
I can't believe I ate the whole thing.
France has come through again. Speaking of which,
Yes.
the Olympics have been occurring the entire time we've been here.
Yes.
The day that we arrived was the day of the
one
opening
gold.
ceremony.
Yeah. Yes.
Let me tell you something. Let me just give you a little insight of what it's like to observe the Olympics through the eyes of a Frenchman. The French have won everything, Leo. They have won everything they've ever competed in the Olympics. I have seen the same 5 or 6 guys that won gold medals from France like 180 times a piece. They're interviewed night and day. The highlights of these amazing victories are shown again and again and again. We had come home on Sunday afternoon specifically to see the USA basketball team throttle Spain, and we actually did get to see the end of the game. But most of the time, and this is absolutely flabbergasting to me, we watched a handball game.
Oh.
Instead, that's what they showed.
Do the French have a fabulous handball team?
You know they do. You know they do.
Did they win? Did they medal?
The night before, their basketball team, which actually I have to say was
in fact, as I remember, weren't the women in the finals?
They were great.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then the United States beat them by like 43 points or something.
Yeah, but they were in the finals. They got a silver.
Yeah, but they were good. I have to say, the basketball team from France was the women's basketball team was very good.
Yeah. Handball, I didn't even know it was an Olympic sport, to be honest.
Oh, there are many things in the Olympics, like fast walking, which is basically appears to be a form of human torture. I
love the fast walkers.
Look stupid and be emaciated.
You know why they do it? Because it's the one sport everybody watching thinks they can excel at. Oh, I could do that. I could.
You know what that is? That's a Stephen King story. That's the long walk. This is like guys walking until they die.
Oh, no, I could do the 100-meter fast walk, though. Do they have that?
No, that's like the espresso walk. I got to go to Starbucks. I'll be right back.
I got to pee. How about I could do, let me think. I could do 200 meters. Do they have that?
I don't think so. It's like 43 meters. It's like 43 kilometers or something. It's like a marathon.
Oh, no, I couldn't do that.
No, it's long. It's bad, Leo. It's not exercise. It's the opposite of exercise. It's how can we destroy your muscles in the most efficient possible manner.
All right, Paul Thurrott, always a pleasure. I'm sorry that Mary Jo wasn't here, but it was fun kind of reliving old times when it was just you and me and a bunch of Microsoft news.
I'm actually most sorry that I don't remember why she's not here. I feel weird about that. I knew she wasn't going to be here.
Yeah, I didn't even know she wasn't going to be here. So you're one step ahead of me on that. She probably mentioned it.
I know she did.
Yeah.
And we acted interested and we nodded our heads. And then I don't.
And you are Mary Jo.
Yeah, you are. Why? Yes.
Who are you? Well, she'll be back unless she's not. Unless she mentioned that too. But it might. I believe she'll be back next week. I don't.
Yeah.
She might have said, "I've had it with you guys. I am out of here.
Screw you guys. I'm going
okay,
home."
Thanks, Mary Jo. I don't remember. She's on assignment. She's fast walking back from.
I have Portland in my head. No, but she went to Portland already. I don't know.
It's probably got to do with beer. I'm guessing.
St. Louis wasn't St. Louis like 2 weeks ago?
St. Louis. She was in Toronto last week. Maybe she's still walking back from Toronto. Maybe she's visiting the falls. We'll find out next week. No, she is in St. Louis. Because I remember, I think she is in St. Louis. She's at a Hadoop. She's at a big Hadoop conference in St. Louis.
Shut up. First of all, that's an oxymoron. You just said a big Hadoop conference.
Well, big for Hadoop. She's guest hosting Attack of the Show on G4.
Oh.
Yeah. I don't know where she is, but we're sorry she wasn't here. She will be back next week. Meanwhile, Paul Thurrott is at SuperSite for Windows, winsupersite.com. His new book, Windows 8 Secrets, will be out any day now. October? September?
Soon, yeah. September, I would hope.
Yeah, soon. It's done. And, of course, he's an analyst for Penton Media. We do this show Thursdays, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 1800 UTC on TWiT. So do watch live because we appreciate the feedback from the chat room. They were trying to figure out where Mary Jo was this whole time. Apparently she's at the airport, according to the Twitter. She's at Hadoop-a-polooza.
Nice. So maybe she's flying home from this event. That was the issue.
Thank you, Savage Mike. I think we have a show title.
I'll ping her and be like, "Where are you?
Hadoop-a-polooza.
We started 2 hours ago."
Dude, would you do that for me? Oh, if you miss the show, though, we have on-demand audio and video available at all times at twit.tv/WW for Windows Weekly. Or, subscribe on what do they call it? The Zune Marketplace? What do they call it now?
Something like that, yeah.
Something like that.
The Marketplace.
The live Marketplace. The Town Square.
People crawling.
A guy just walked by. I don't know. I think the delivery man's here. No, it's fine. I'm just teasing you. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on Windows Weekly. Bye-bye, Paul. France made it the whole way. I was just teasing. Come on, have a seat. It was kind of funny, though. I mean, you just walked by. It was good. I liked it. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, sir.